All right, what's up, guys? We're back here the second night in a row talking WWE Evolution 2025 here on the channel. Let you guys hop on in after what we're going to talk about, what I think was the best show of the year in WWE thus far, and probably one of the best shows WWE's done in a good while, maybe. That was a tremendous, tremendous show, and we'll talk all about it and get your guys' thoughts on everything that happened. You had pretty much a variety of things. You had, very good standout singles matches. You had the triple threat match to open the show that was awesome. The main event was awesome with a shocking ending to that show, to the show in general. I mean, just unbelievable. I'll tell you up front, we'll get into everything as we usually do, but this was, this was not probably the card that was built up the best of any of the shows this weekend by any means. But wow, this was the best show of the year in WWE, hands down. I think. I don't even know what the close second would be to this point. I saw some people talking about Elimination Chamber. I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't really remember Elimination Chamber all that much. I know we had the shocking heel turn with Cena, but that's about all I remember from that show. But we'll talk about it. Appreciate you guys hopping in. Good to see the regulars here. Michael's here. Brandon's giving it a 10 out of 10 show. You're not the only one. Robert's going to, also enjoyed it. Naomi, what about that? What about Naomi cashing in to win the championship? And it was the one we thought she would win. We thought it would be Naomi cashing in at SummerSlam to do it against either Jade or Tiffany, but clearly not going to be the case, which of course brings up a great question from Deontay. Now what do you do, right? What does Bianca do now if Jade and Naomi are the champions? That is a great question, and I think maybe that's the question they want us to ask. So a very good question, because that is honestly not even a scenario I ever thought about, but we probably should have thought about it when you consider that Naomi had the briefcase. What happens if Jade is a champion and Naomi is a champion and Bianca is on the outside looking in? Then what do you do, right? So it's going to be interesting. All right, we'll get into it. You guys, as always, start off. Give me your grade on this show. I can't see this being anything lower than a 9. If you want to give it a 10, you can give it a 10, as Brandon did. I may give it a 10 when all is said and done. I just thought everything delivered on this show. So, this was miles better than Saturday night's main event. I don't even think they were on the same level. That was good stuff. So, all right, we're just gonna start with the last match, because I think that's what a lot of you guys are gonna want to talk about right off the bat. Shout out to the new people in here too. I see the Dinosaur saying first time here. A lot of other people weighing in with their thoughts on what happened tonight. So. I think this was just an insane show. As Michael said, to see everything kind of stack up the way that it did, I think this was about as good as it gets for WWE this year and in recent years. So, all right, we will start at the top. I mean, Rhea Ripley, IYO SKY, we said I thought that Rhea was going to win the championship. If you listen to the predictions that we did, I did the bonus predictions for you guys, for the members. I did it on the audio feed, which remember you can check out. I'll put the link back into to it on the show here. And just quickly, if you are jumping in for the first time, remember this is just a reaction show. I'll go through each of the matches, but this isn't your move by move review that you may have on other podcasts. I just kind of react and we talk about it with you guys. So I will put the link to the podcast feed. I am doing some sort of exclusive audio and such over there. But listen, this was again something where I think you had this be a setup where the whole story was, can Rhea finally beat IYO, right? And I thought it was going to happen. I mean, I thought that was kind of a pretty compelling choice to have that finally happen and, make it a scenario where she had to do it, right? If there's a place to do it, this had to be it. And it seemed like they were setting it up that way. I mean, she got the pin when the referee went down. They took it to the crowd, all the chaos there. They brought it back, and you're thinking, okay, this is it. Rhea's about to win. And then Naomi comes out, and so Rhea still has that elusive, cannot beat IYO in a singles match, and Naomi is to blame. So, yeah, I mean, the match itself was about what you probably would have expected from the two women who have had the match of the year in WWE thus far, with Rhea and IYO and Bianca at WrestleMania. I still think that's the best match in WWE all year. I'm going to tell you, there's a close second maybe now, because we're going to talk about the other triple threat match on this show here in a second. I thought that was tremendous. Feels like a long time ago after the Naomi cash-in, but yeah, I mean, I think that you're looking at this now and seeing it where this was a potential option, right? I mean, you always know that when you have the Money in the Bank holder, it's always there that they could cash in at any time. But I think we were so focused, and that is why it works great, is we were so focused that it had to be Naomi, something to do with Jade, something to do with Bianca. It had to be that. But as was brought up earlier, what if you do now get that question of, all right, well, maybe it's not a matter of this person or that person, but maybe it's a matter of both, right? Maybe both are champions now. And so Naomi's the champion on this brand. Jade's the champion on this brand. How do you bring it all together with Bianca once she returns? So it is fascinating. Like, this was quite the twist, and I'm excited to see how they kind of navigate this now, because they do have a very compelling situation if that is the route you go, which I'm just going to assume Jade beats Tiffany right now. That's still probably the thinking. And Naomi's the champion already, so we don't have to wait on that one. And yeah, as Brandon mentions here, I mean, now we know. We'll talk about the Battle Royal here in just a second. We'll probably follow up with that because it naturally flows into this. But yeah, I mean, with Stephanie Vaquer being the Battle Royal winner, now you are, as of right now, looking at Naomi versus Stephanie at Clash in Paris. But that comes after SummerSlam, so I think we have to keep that in mind. Now, any of your projected matches for SummerSlam involving Rhea or IYO, or even Naomi, well, all that's thrown out the window, right? Because now you've got to figure out, okay, what is the match at SummerSlam now? Because we thought maybe Naomi's just kind of in the background. She lost the match tonight, which was not surprising to Jade. We figured that would happen. But yeah, now it's a scenario where what do they do with these women? Do you run it back? Do you have some sort of combination again? I don't know, but I think yeah, this is clearly something where they have options, and so yeah, I mean, I'm with you guys. I think this was sometimes I always say the main event really is the biggest portion of your show, and the way they finished it tonight, I mean, it is something where you have so many ways now you can go with this by having Naomi win, and I think that's kind of set up to where you're going to look at this and feel like it's a pretty good scenario. Any way you do it, no matter what combination of matches you now have with Naomi as the champion, either at SummerSlam or we know it's going to be Stephanie at Clash in Paris. Either way, I mean, you're set up for success here, in my opinion, because you've got kind of the sidebar story of what happens if Jade wins and what does Bianca do, and there's all kinds of stuff, right? So, as Drew McIntyre said, sometimes all you need to be is a Fatu in WWE, and you're going to get yourself a championship. Well, Naomi now has the title. So, Sean said here too, and we'll get back to this too. I think this is a good point, just kind of the show as a whole. But Sean saying, been watching WWE for 40 years. Women nowadays, talent-wise, work-wise, mic-wise, are equal to or better than the entire mid-car storylines of the men on both shows. I agree with that. I think that the women's stuff right now, tonight was the perfect example. We were saying this when the first Evolution came around in 2018 or whatever, a couple of years after things really started to take off. But like now, I mean, I keep telling you guys, like I used to not be a regular watcher of NXT. I watch NXT so much now that it's a lot to do with the women's division. It's seeing, okay, you can pinpoint this person or that person as kind of the next rising star. And that's the reason why. Is a lot of it has to do with the women's division. And so, now you've got so many ways you can go, like we said, coming out of this. And so, yeah, I think, as C-Dub brings up here too, my thinking was if Stephanie was going to win the Battle Royal, and we can tie that in here, it was Stephanie Vaquer. If you missed it, she did win the Battle Royal. She eliminated Lash Legend at the end. And I kind of like the fact they put Lash Legend in that spot, Atlanta, hometown, all that. Nikki Bella got to the Final Four. You had Nia Jackson there, probably pretty predictable for that. But, using the Devil's Kiss on the apron was the way to do it. And I said, if you're going to pick Stephanie to win this over a Nikki Bella, to me, it's like, that means she's going into that match in Paris feeling like she has to win the title, to me. Now, if it was Rhea, I think maybe there is kind of something where, all right, if she loses, hey, it's Rhea, right? But like Naomi, an actual full-on heel type scenario, although I don't know. I mean, you heard the crowd reaction to Naomi. I don't know if she's going to be a full-on heel. But against Stephanie, you're not sure. I mean, Paris, as you said, the atmosphere is going to be great. It's going to be a tremendous atmosphere. And so if that's the match you get, then maybe that's where you go from here. So I don't know. But I think that you're probably putting Stephanie in a position where if she feels like she's going to be the champion sooner rather than later. But will it happen in Paris? Will they kind of hold that off a bit longer? I don't know, because as Brian says here, do you want Naomi to lose it right away? And I think that becomes the question now, because you have two big shows coming up. You have SummerSlam and you have Clash in Paris. That's a month and a half sort of time frame here. SummerSlam's 3 weeks from now, basically, right? And then you got Clash in Paris at the end of August. So you've got something where if Naomi's going to hold this belt longer, she's going to have a match at SummerSlam, and then she's going to have Stephanie at Clash in Paris. So she's got some big matches coming up. So will this be a quick run? Will it not be? Is that where someone else factors in? Does Jade or Bianca factor into Naomi losing the title somehow? Lots of questions that could still be answered on this. So, yeah, I'm with you. I said it. I like this. It completely changes the landscape here, and it does give you some fresh possibilities in terms of your matches. And it's not predictable, right? I mean, that's always something too. I think that was the biggest win here, is that it just wasn't predictable. Sometimes that's a bad thing to do it. That's okay. We do it just because it's a swerve, right? No, it's a good swerve because it makes logical sense. She was the Money in the Bank holder. She could cash in on any champion she wanted, and she didn't cash in on the one we thought she would cash in on. She cashed in on the other one. Great. Works out. So, yeah, so we'll see. I know Deontay asked, do you think there was anything to this with Seth's injury? And I think that was a good question. It's one of the first things I thought. I'm like, well, do you make the switch knowing that you don't have the other briefcase to work with probably for an extended amount of time? And we will talk about Rollins' injury at the end of this a little bit later when we get into you guys and talking about just our usual back and forth on kind of everything that's happened this weekend. But for now, I do think it's kind of wondering, okay, was this something maybe you swap to get the Money in the Bank? Give you a little something at the end of the weekend, right? And what's, as we said, kind of being a bit of a downer after the Rollins injury. But this whole show made up for it, whether you did that in the main event or not. But yeah, I think that we'll talk more about that. I know you guys are asking about Rollins. There were some reports that came out today, actually. I'll read it to you word for word here in just a bit once we get through kind of looking at some of these options. So, all right. So now we're going to do this. And look, Thomas says here too, and I think, again, we're going to tie all this in. Quickly on the Battle Royal before I forget. I thought Jada Parker was great. Again, I told you guys she's kind of my wild card right now. She was one of my long shot choices for this Battle Royal. Didn't ever think she was going to win, but I think she's clearly of that NXT group. She's on the way up. I thought she was really good in this. And, elsewhere you had kind of your usual stuff in a Battle Royal, but Stephanie winning was the right move. I said Nikki Bella was probably the second favorite in this one, but just don't know how the Liv Morgan injury factored into Nikki's plans moving forward. So it was a hard sell for me to ever see a Nikki versus IYO or a Nikki versus Rhea, even though you kind of had the generation versus generation possibility there. But I just think Stephanie was the right choice. But Battle Royal, again, it's a Battle Royal, and I thought the right person won. I thought the finish was one of the best we've seen ever in a Battle Royal, doing it the way they did it with the Devil's Kiss on the apron. That was very clever. So I liked it. All right, so again, Jade, Naomi. I mean, we kind of just throw that match out the window, but I'm going to tell you right now, I thought that was Jade's best match in WWE so far. I thought she was really good there. And, of course, Naomi was Naomi. She did a lot of good things. The finish was great, having put her through the table after Jade went through the table earlier and all that. Bianca and Jade kind of having that stare down, a little tension there, all that. So another match that I thought delivered. So once again, you can kind of tie it all in together, and like we said, that's going to factor into the bigger story with these three who you feel like are going to be connected over the next at least 6 months, probably through WrestleMania next year, because if I'm going to make an early prediction for WrestleMania, what are we at, 42? It's been a long weekend. We've watched a lot of wrestling this weekend, guys. We said we watched however many straight hours yesterday. We watched this tonight. 42, Bianca versus Jade seems like your direction for WrestleMania 42. I've got to think that's where we're headed on that. So, yeah, by the way, too, just quickly, with Jermaine here, I agree. Like Lash Legend, if you guys go back, if you remember of course, she's, former sports star, all this stuff. But if you go back and like when she first started, it was one where you're like, okay, she's clearly got the athletic ability. She's got the physical tools and everything, right? The size, all that kind of stuff. But, hey, it's wrestling. And you've got to really eventually, it's got to click at some point. And I know some people earlier were very hard on her, but I think you're starting to see it click. Like she has kind of those it factors. The personality is certainly there, the charisma, but like the wrestling part is really, she's gotten to a level where she is good. And I think that, unfortunately, when they broke up the tag team with her and Jakar Jackson, you knew that they were kind of putting in motion something for Lash Legend to be kind of a singles focus. And, we talked about them whenever they were having that tag team run on the main roster. I was like, hey, they're clearly, some wheels are turning here. They're starting to get better and all those things. And so, I think this was definitely something where you saw her stand out without question. All right, you guys are hopping in. Appreciate a lot of you jumping in here now. Remember, as I keep mentioning, and I'll throw this in there, we'll keep going through the rest of the card, talk about some of these other matches, and I'll get back to your comments. The best way to make sure I don't miss your comment is a super chat. All you got to do, leave a little cash, a little change there, and I'll make sure I see your chat. Always appreciate you guys hopping in. We try to get to as many chats as we can, but of course, it's not easy to do. We have 100 plus of you, 200 plus of you. We had, almost 300 to 400 last night. So, yeah, sometimes it can get a little tough for me to catch every one of your comments, but you guys know I appreciate it. And as I mentioned earlier, be sure, if you want to check out all the bonus content we're doing now on the channel, I did all the predictions this weekend, minus Saturday night's main event for our members, audio exclusive, didn't do those video style, but be sure to support the channel. You can do that, $3.99 a month. You can join the Tribal Chiefs is what we call our members here. So you can join in, get the bonus content, all that kind of stuff. I really appreciate you guys supporting the channel. And quickly, I will link to, as well, to the podcast feed, any podcast app you use. Check out all the exclusive audio content we got there. I mentioned earlier, if you guys are up for it, you can give me a thumbs up, thumbs down. If you want me to start doing, I mentioned kind of doing a long-form weekly show where we talk about kind of everything. It will be kind of a bit of a longer podcast-style episode. We may do it, here on the channel, video-style, live, or just a recorded one where it's kind of just your long-form podcast each week. You get my thoughts on pretty much everything. So that is something we're considering. So let me know if you would be up for that. All right. Let's get back to some of your stuff here. Speaking of NXT, let's go ahead and just go into that. I want to save the women's triple threat for last, and then we'll get into all your questions and comments and such. But the NXT match, I said in the predictions thing that I recorded this morning that initially I was like, this is a slam dunk. It's got to be Jordynne Grace, got to be Jordynne Grace, got to be Jordynne Grace. But when you saw the way I think that everything led to this point, the mind started to twist a little bit where I'm like, I don't think so anymore. I'm not convinced on this because here's what happened, right? You had the buddy stuff this week on NXT with Jordynne Grace and Blake Monroe. You knew at that point, all right, clearly, as I said, Blake Monroe's starting to butter up Jordynne Grace a little bit for that eventual turn. I didn't think it would be this fast, but clearly they said, we're going to go ahead and do this. And I can't say it was like the smoothest, the way this thing maybe was executed. You kind of had Michael Cole on the commentary. I don't know what happened there, but like it wasn't the smoothest thing here. But nonetheless, Blake Monroe turns, as you guys said. We all kind of knew the turn was coming. It's just a matter of when it was going to happen. But she turns, and before the match, WWE put out the exclusive on Twitter or whatever about how Jordynne Grace specifically asked Blake Monroe to come to the ring with her, which you're like, okay, logically that makes sense. You got Fatal Influence on the other side. Jasmine Nix, you got Fallon Henley. She needs a little help out there. All right, that's her buddy now. Great. But it ultimately costs her. And I think, too, we had to tie in the fact that the winner was going to face Masha Slamovich at TNA Slammiversary. Winner takes all. And my thinking was that I don't know if you want to put Jordynne Grace in that scenario because if she's headed to the main roster at some point soon, which still seems likely, you don't want her as the double champion. You also probably don't want her to lose to the TNA champion. So for that reason, I started to just be like, okay, it's probably going to be JC Jane. And so they did everything. They did the turn. You kind of had JC Jane kind of give the stare down to Blake Monroe. And now Monroe has what? She pinned the champion at Great American Bash. Now she can claim a title shot. And so I'm thinking she's going to be the person eventually that has a good chance to be the NXT champion. But maybe she has to go through Masha Slamovich first because she could be the person who's winner take all there. Don't know, but there's a lot at stake with all that, but we'll see. how it goes. All right. Yeah, it was it was definitely early, I think, as some of you said, in terms of the turn, but I thought too, another match that I think really was good. I thought it was a good match. And I think that JC Jane probably doesn't get enough credit. I think she's someone else who is kind of coming to her own. And yeah, I think that's probably something where you're looking at it, and that was what the match needed to be, and it exceeded. I think expectations a little bit for me, to be honest with you. So yeah, I thought they did really good in that one. And the turn, now we see what happens with both parties. And of course, it adds a little intrigue to the championship too. So there was that. All right, let's see what else we haven't talked about yet. As I said, I want to save the other one for last. Let's talk quickly about Trish and Tiffany. No surprise on, the finish there. Shorter match. I think it was the shortest match of the night. But look, guys, I mean, let's call it what it is, right? Trish Stratus is 49 years old. And every time she gets in the ring, she still delivers. And I said this was probably the most predictable match on the card. Just did not see a scenario where Trish was going to win. Maybe you could have made an argument in every other match for the other person to win, but this one you probably were not going to find a way to get Trish there. And so, yeah, you still looked at it and felt like this could be something that, more than delivered, more than held its own. And I think it did for what was a shorter match. But as always, I think Tiffany just has the skills. She has the charisma to make it work. And now with Trish, anytime she comes in, I just expect that you're going to get a quality performance from her. And so she doesn't age. And, this was one where, like I mentioned, it's a hard sell to get people to believe that Trish had a chance. But, hey, you hit the high spots. You did the good stuff here that you probably wanted to. You gave Trish kind of her moment after the match. And now Tiffany moves on to focus on Jade Cargill. So, yeah, accomplished everything you want to accomplish with this match. Also, I think the case in the Women's Tag Team Championship match, because there were two things that stood out to me in this particular match. One, well, I'll say three things. You guys know I've talked about how high I am on Sol Ruca. Continue to be the case here. I still think she was probably one of the breakout performers of the past, 72 hours, 48 hours, whatever. Going back to SmackDown, the four-way there, great performance against Izzy Dame in NXT Great American Bash. She shined here in the moment she had in this tag team match. And that was one of them. The other thing was that I do think it was the right call to have Judgment Day win, because I feel like it's going to lead me to point three, and that is, if you're WWE and you're sitting here looking now at this tag team championship picture, to me, there is no clearer choice at SummerSlam than to have Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss beat Raquel Rodriguez and Roxanne Perez in a straight-up tag team match to win the titles. Because they have something with this pairing. And I don't know that I ever expected to say that when they first started Charlotte and Alexa, doing the backstage teases and all this stuff. But once they got the merch, anytime you get the merch, that's when we know you're building up something pretty good here. And so now that these two, and you heard the crowd reaction. I mean, how long has it been? Like, really, I don't know the answer to this. You guys can tell me. But how long has it been since we've seen a crowd react that positively to Charlotte Flair than they did tonight? Now, maybe that's coming off the heels of the Players Tribune story and all that this week. If you haven't read it, I highly suggest you check it out. It was a very in-depth, personal type story with Charlotte, all that kind of stuff. And maybe that was a big part of it. But there is something to what they're doing with these two. And I feel like if you're looking at ideas, I don't think it's Charlotte or Alexa turn on each other right now. I think you got to keep these two together, because the crowd is reacting very positively. And, I mean, as Michael said, you kind of had the thing where Charlotte saves Alexa. You've got Alexa, sort of stunned by that moment where Charlotte saves her after once I told you guys, Sol Ruca and Zarya, they were going to once again have a miscommunication. It happens every week or two on NXT. But that happened again. Charlotte makes the save. And, I think they should win the titles. And I know it's a good point here. And Michael Cole pointed out on commentary tonight, it's actually the first match for Roxanne and Raquel as a team, right? Since she replaced Liv. But I'm still of the opinion that I don't know, and this is where the time frame for Liv, right? How soon will Liv be back? And I don't know if it's going to be that soon. And so I don't know if your best option is to have these two hold the titles for a while. I feel like you can maybe disrupt things a little bit more if you do have them lose to a Charlotte and an Alexa because of the positive momentum they have. And maybe that kind of changes the plans a little bit, right? Where maybe, you did want it to be a scenario where, hey, we don't want to get the titles off of these two. But now when you see how the fans are reacting to Charlotte and Alexa, because I do think it's going to happen just beyond tonight, I think they've got something, and I think you kind of strike now while the iron's hot, and maybe that's what we get to, but that's just one theory from me. We'll see if I change my mind by the time we get to SummerSlam. But another match that delivered and did its thing. So, yeah, appreciate some of you guys jumping in. We've been going through the matches. You can scroll back, listen to our thoughts already on everything. I'll kind of give some other thoughts here from you guys. Yeah, weighing in on different things. Charles, very happy for Naomi. Yeah, we talked about that for a bit, Charles. We'll talk about it more, I'm sure, here in a few minutes. But yes, Naomi is going to be the story coming out of this one. And I will reiterate what I think was the best WWE PLE all year and one of the best WWE PLEs probably in recent years. I know someone said earlier, and I apologize I missed it, but I remember maybe the best since SummerSlam 2024, so last year's SummerSlam, which was a really good show. Yeah, this one may even eclipse that for me. I think this was about as good as it gets, I think, for what you were trying to achieve. So, yeah, I'm there. I'm all in on this one. So, I guess pun intended, based on AEW All In this weekend. But I think this is probably the best show of the weekend. We'll see. All right. And now let's just quickly talk about the triple threat match, and then we'll get to all the stuff you guys want to talk about as we usually do. I mean, I thought after that match, I'm like, there's nothing that can top this. But then, of course, I knew that we still had Rhea and IYO to come, and little did I know what was going to happen with Naomi. So you guys can tell me which match you thought was better, and it maybe sort of, more of a recency thing where the last one is what's sticking in our mind the most right now. But I don't want to discount the idea that triple threat match that opened the show with Becky, Bayley, and Lyra was one of the best WWE matches this year, because I think it was. I don't think it matched the WrestleMania 41 triple threat with Rhea, IYO, and Bianca, but I think it was probably second in terms of being one of the top matches this year. And, I was actually trying to remember if I had to do my match rankings right now for the year, which we will. We haven't never done those on the channel, but we will do those at the end of this year. I think you're putting those two in there. You're probably putting that triple threat, once again, three triple threats. CM Punk, Rollins, and Reigns, I think you're probably putting on that list. Chad Gable, maybe, and Vikingo from the AAA show, I thought was really, really good. And I know there's some other matches I'm just forgetting, but yeah, I mean, I think that the women's triple threat for the Intercontinental title is probably a top 5 match in WWE this year. And so it was just, they had a bunch of creative, pins and near falls and all this stuff. Like they work so well. I think just the dynamic of what those three have become, right? Like Becky, the man, I think she's doing some of the best work of her career, maybe second only to the run she had to get to the top in the WrestleMania 35 main event. I think Lyra has started to come into her own. I think Bayley is also kind of feels rejuvenated now in this kind of story that she's in with these two. And so I don't know how you keep this thing going necessarily based on the way it finished tonight. I think we all know that the spot you want to get to eventually is the Lyra turn. But I mean, listen, I think there's so much to work with here right now with everything going on. So, yeah, this was one of the best WWE matches this year. Becky winning was the right call, I think, but it was undoubtedly, I think, like I said, one of the best matches this year, and I just thought it was incredible. And that's why this was such a great show. You really bookended it with what I thought were two of the best matches in WWE this year, in the triple threat for the IC title and Rhea and IYO plus Naomi at the end. So, yeah, I think that's kind of where we're at. So, Michael brings up a good point. Could you see with Bayley or Lyra, you have something to do with Julia maybe? And that's where, like, this whole draft thing comes in. Have we done that this year? I don't remember. I don't think we have. Have we? I don't even remember what the plans are for the draft and all that. So, we'll see. But, all right. So there you go. We went through all the matches. We talked about it, kind of gave some thoughts to what we usually do here. It's half reaction/review. And then mostly it is you guys talking about whatever you want to talk about now as we move forward. So get in your questions, comments, anything else you want to add. Like I said, if you leave a super chat, that'll make sure I get to your comments and all that. So, and we'll see, what all we have to talk about. I know there was a lot coming out of Saturday night's main event, mostly regarding Seth Rollins. We'll do that first, actually. I'll give you the update if you didn't see it today. It is something. I actually wrote about this over at the Takedown on SI, the Sports Illustrated site. You can check it out there. So there was a report earlier today with Seth Rollins. And by the way, Deontay, I'm going to get back to your question. I think that's a good question, and we'll talk about in a second with the women's titles, potentially switching brands. But the status of Seth Rollins. Of course, we know the match last night ended abruptly with LA Knight. LA Knight won. That was not the original finish based on reports. Seth was supposed to win, but clearly hurt his knee, and it was a legitimate injury. And the report suggested, it's not good. There were some updates today. So the latest update, it sounds like this evening, was from Fightful Select that Rollins was backstage on crutches with a brace on his knee, and that basically it looked like it did not look good, which, again, is not surprising based on what we saw last night and kind of the fallout from that, right? There was also a report earlier in the day from Wrestling Observer Radio. Brian Alvarez, Dave Meltzer weighed in. They kind of reiterated some of that. Basically, the last 40 minutes of Saturday night's main event was changed due to that match ending abruptly. There was another planned segment. You guys know my prediction on that would have been that's probably where Roman Reigns comes back. And so you had to scrap all of that with Roman Reigns last night, which, again, you want to talk about just a gut punch to WWE. Losing Seth Rollins, not getting to do the Roman Reigns thing on primetime and NBC, that's just a double whammy when you think about it. And it's more than that based on if you have Rollins out for an extended amount of time. I mean, it's much worse than that based on all the stories, but we're going to talk about that in a second. But, again, there was something that Dave Meltzer said, which I know everyone has their opinions on Dave, but he did say something, and I'm going to read this word for word here, okay? Quote, someone who I 100% trust told me don't go so strong on the idea that it's real at all because they pretty much heard about it on Thursday. So I don't know. I mean, everybody thinks that it's real. I don't want to say more. Everyone's going with the idea it's real. It's only one person who told me that, but it was someone to warn me. I don't know what that means. I don't know what... I just have to assume that it's a real injury. I don't think you can fake that. And so I don't think that's accurate. I think that it's a legitimate injury, and I think that's probably what we're looking at with Seth Rollins. We don't know the timeline. I assume we're going to find out something tomorrow night on Raw, but right now it does sound like who I said has really been the face of WWE television for how many months now? I mean, he has been the most constant figure on the show for the brand itself more than anyone, more than Cody, more than Cena, more than Punk. Like, he has been the Mr. Consistent. And so the whole faction was built around this coming out of WrestleMania to get to, I think, Rollins versus Reigns at SummerSlam. And as Brian says, we were talking about it last night. If you missed the Saturday night's main event reaction show, go back and watch that. We talked about a lot of topics. But I told you, I'm like, if you're going to pivot it, to me, you're pivoting to Roman Reigns versus Bron Breakker. I think that's the only logical option. And, it's a big opportunity for Breakker. There's a story there you can sell between those two. And I think that's what they should go towards. But WWE did give us a little bit of a wrinkle thrown in tonight at Evolution because they did announce the 5-man gauntlet match tomorrow night on Raw. It will be CM Punk, LA Knight, Jey Uso, Penta, and Bron Breakker. The winner of the gauntlet match goes on to face Gunther for the World Heavyweight Championship at SummerSlam. So we talked about this yesterday, and we've talked about this leading up to it. Who is Gunther going to face at SummerSlam? Well, I told you, my opinion is that they clearly have been teasing something with CM Punk. But you don't know, because if the Rollins thing throws off how many possible things, right? You just don't know what all has been shuffled around coming out of this. And so, to me, that becomes the bigger question here, is that do you change anything? You have to change things. You have to. And like I said, I think maybe it's as simple as just going to Reigns versus Breakker. And maybe Brian's right here in terms of maybe Roman interferes, costs Breakker the match, and that's something you can do there. And maybe Roman helps Punk, because think about it, it was Roman and Punk. Breaker was the guy that threw them over on the Raw and WrestleMania, after WrestleMania. These have been the three central figures, if you think about it, coming out of that. It was Bron Breakker joining Seth Rollins, and it was basically them taking down Roman Reigns and CM Punk. So I'm with Brian here. I think if you do the Gauntlet match, you get to Punk versus Breakker at the end, and maybe that's where Reigns is able to thwart Bronson Reed, and that helps Punk win the Gauntlet match, go on to face Gunther, then you set up Reigns versus Breakker, and it's that simple. You get your two matches. You get Punk versus Gunther at SummerSlam, you get Reigns versus Breakker. I think that's probably where you're headed. Seems like the best way to do it to me. Because otherwise, you just don't know how much is out there. Now, look, I hate it that LA Knight's going to lose another match, potentially, if it is Punk who wins. They could do LA Knight versus Gunther. That's possible, I suppose. But it seemed like the idea was that LA Knight was not going to beat Seth Rollins. And so, I don't know if that's what they're going to do. I told you guys, I feel like LA Knight has to win big matches at some point. I don't even know if that counts now. Saturday Night's Main Event, I still don't think that probably counts, even though it was, one of the bigger wins he's had in WWE. It just probably doesn't count the same because of what happened to Rollins, right? So I think that's it. Here's a great question, Brandon. I mean, if you do Roman versus Braun, who wins? I don't know. I think Braun should win the match. I think at that point, you probably would be better served if Seth Rollins is going to be out for months. You are better served to have Bron Breakker beat Roman Reigns. Because what does that do? That immediately puts Bron Breakker at the forefront of this group. And remember, Breakker talking, when it was earlier this week, the timeline of all this wrestling, I don't even remember. Was that this past Monday? Where Breaker's like, Heyman and company, they see him as the vision. He is the future. And so, why not have Bron Breakker beat Roman Reigns? Because what are you really setting up Roman Reigns for at this point? I told you, he's going to have 2 more matches the rest of the year, probably. Does he need to beat Bron Breakker? Probably not. But, again, listen, a lot of this is dependent on what happens with Rollins. Is he out 2 months or is he out 8 months? That could change everything. So, it's hard to know just yet until we know what the timeline is for Rollins, but I would say the early leader here is to have Breakker beat Reigns. Will they do it? I don't know. That's a big jump, but they've been positioning Bron Breakker as that guy, right? So why not? Because that would establish him. It put him at the front, and you're making up the ground. He's not going to beat Seth Rollins, but hey, having Bron Breakker walking around, having just beaten Roman Reigns, I mean, the Money in the Bank briefcase is sitting there. Heyman won't give it to Breakker because they're going to save it for Seth because he still has, up to a year to cash it in. There's stuff you could do there. There's a fun story there. But we'll see. The Seth Rollins entry, I think, matters a lot in terms of picking that. But, yeah, I think we'll see. All right, let's see what else we've got here. I see some other comments coming in. Let me make sure I get some of these here. So I'm going to star some of these so I don't forget to get back to them. All right, yep, shout out to Travis jumping in. Yeah, PLE cooked. It did, Travis. One of the best of the year. The best of the year in WWE, period. One of the best in recent years, for sure. All right, Adrian loved the show too. Brandon says, don't know, Roman return match if he loses. He just lost at WrestleMania. Yeah, Braun winning, understand the point, but Roman winning would be huge. Braun wins, but Heyman distraction. Yeah, that's the thing too. And I think for me, it's understood. Like, right, Reigns just lost a big match. Do you really want him losing again? My thinking is still like, Roman Reigns is Roman Reigns, right? Like, he has a certain aura about him no matter whether he wins or loses. But yes, he needs to win matches. I get that. And so it's really, like I said, it's hard to know because you don't know what they were setting up with Reigns and Rollins. You would have thought, all right, Reigns comes back, he beats Rollins, he gets his revenge, right? That was probably going to be the story they were going to tell. But if you're switching this many things around and you're without Rollins for that many months, I just think if you can elevate Breakker with one match, like that's all it takes, and it would be that one, where you could just completely elevate him then to that point to where, let's say, Rollins comes back. Then it's like, well, Breakker's sitting there again, walking around, knowing that he holds the win over Roman Reigns, that, maybe Seth Rollins doesn't. And so it is kind of one of those where, like I said, I think we're building how many years, months down the road it is to Bron Breakker versus Seth Rollins at some point. Like every group's going to break up, but I don't know. It's a great discussion, and we will have more of it, I'm sure, depending on how long we know Rollins is going to be out. Then that'll determine a lot to me, but we'll see. Like you said, I don't know if they want Reigns losing in his first match back, but I don't really know what they're setting Reigns up for beyond SummerSlam at this point if there is no Rollins. So, don't know. All right, let's get back to some of your questions. Let me go back to some of these that I had here on this. Deontay brings up, too, there was a report out there yesterday, I think, of whether Gunther is going to be Cena's final opponent. I'll tell you what I would think of that. I would think that's perfect. Because initially, when we were, you can go back to probably early last year, 2024, when we were debating, or no, not early 2024, after WrestleMania 40 last year, we were debating possible Cena opponents, both at WrestleMania and final opponents. Gunther was on that list for me for both. Because I said you could do like this is sort of the John Cena last dance going up against this guy whose entire vision is just professional wrestling. Cena is the sports entertainer. Gunther is the professional wrestler. And that story is the easiest story you could tell going into Cena's final match, right? It's John Cena versus professional wrestling because that's what Gunther is. So I would love it. I would think that's a perfect way for Cena to go out, having him versus Gunther. Is it title versus title? We don't know at that point. There's ways you could do that, right? You make Gunther the double champion. How do they do all that kind of stuff? Still remains to be seen. But I would love that choice. And quite honestly, of the remaining possible choices, I don't think Cody needs to be the final opponent. I don't think Punk. We've already done that. I don't think it's Drew McIntyre, although I think those two need to do something before Cena retires. I think Gunther's the best choice. So I hope this report's right because I think that's the way to go. Because I thought from the beginning that may be the WrestleMania match this year, before we of course had the heel turn and all this other stuff. Because I just thought it's a great story you can tell between those two and kind of knowing the thought, like I said, professional wrestler versus sports entertainer and all that. So I would love it, to be honest with you. I think that's the best choice. Hope it happens. All right, let's see what we've got here. Michael asked earlier, what do you do with Bronson Reed and Jey Uso if you go with Punk and Gunther and Reigns and Breakker? Now, that's a good question. Jey needs a little payback, right? But I don't know. I think you probably look at it and wonder, I don't know if that's a big enough match for, and that's not a knock on Bronson Reed, but Jay's coming off the championship. We mentioned, does Jay get involved in this bloodline stuff on SmackDown? The brand split to me is just non-existent at this point. I don't even care because I really don't care who appears on what brand, right? So you could throw Jade in the mix over there if you need to. That may feel like a step down a little bit, but I don't know. That's a good question, and we'll have to see. I think tomorrow night will tell us a lot about where they're headed with everybody. But Jay does need to get a little payback on Bronson Reed, and you got to fill two nights. So who knows, right? Maybe Bronson Reed's just the odd man out. Jay does something where he joins Jacob Fatu and Jimmy Uso. That's probably, I think, just a likely scenario, but I don't know if that feels like a step down for Jay. But it's hard to keep him at the same level if he's not the champion, right? So, not sure. All right. Let's see what else we get to here. Dwayne added, or Roman doesn't need to win if he gets Braun at SummerSlam because they'll still need to do Roman versus Rock if they can make that happen. Yeah, that's still a match that's out there. Just all depends on the final boss. Is he coming back? Is he going to? Who knows? So, yeah, that's it. We'll see with the final boss. We never know what he's up to. There. All right. What else we got? Again, guys, if you're hopping in for the first time, do me a favor. Hit the subscribe button if you're joining in the channel for the first time. We did talk a lot about Evolution earlier. If you're wondering why we're talking about other things right now, we spent a good half hour talking about Evolution, the best WWE PLE of the year for my money, and one of the best WWE PLEs in recent years also. That's my thinking on that. And so, yep. Also, I'm going to give you an immediate, here's this coming actually from my colleague, Rick over at the Takedown on SI. We just got this information here, so I'm going to give this to you live here as well. So, in the press conference, Rick asked or maybe I don't know if he asked, but he got the information here from Triple H. Just gave an update on Rollins, said it doesn't look good. Rollins going to have an MRI tomorrow. So that's the update on Seth Rollins. He'll have an MRI tomorrow. It doesn't look good. So, there you go. That's not what we wanted to hear, right? So, not what we wanted to hear. MRI tomorrow doesn't look good, per Triple H. So, that kind of confirms everything we talked about. Man, it's just brutal to hear it, right? We knew it was the case, but it's just brutal to hear it. Because that just changes so much on Raw, changes so much for the storylines they were cooking, man. They were cooking up some good stuff moving forward, but that's all going to be kind of set aside now. But you also have to ask, what do they do with the group? Do you expand the group? Do they bring in, some other people now? Do you bring up Ricky Saints, Ethan Page? That was rumored as well. We'll see. So, I don't know. Zoa's here, a legend in the chat. Zoa is the equivalent to the chat, as this show was the equivalent to a legendary WWE show. They're all in the same. Yes, hope you're doing well. It's been a while. I know I don't do these as much anymore, but good to see you here, as always, jumping in. Give me your thoughts. What'd you think of Evolution? WWE PLE of the year for me. So, Beast Mode, Incredible Hulk is here, saying that Evolution was better than Saturday Night's main event. Yeah, by a good margin, I think. So, yeah, by a good margin. Josh says doesn't know why everyone thinks it's so great. No disrespect. Another totally predictable PLE. Yeah, like I said, I don't. To me, it's more than just the predictability aspect. I think it's everything. I think to me, the way I look at it, anytime I look at not even grading shows, but it's what are your expectations coming in, right? Every match wasn't expected to be a 5-star classic or whatever system you want to use to grade that. Did every match hit what probably the highest point it could have hit? I would say yes. I think pretty much every match hit the highest point it could have hit. And so anytime you have that, to me, that is a show that is hitting on all cylinders. And I think everything on the show hit the level that we pretty much thought it could hit. And if it was going to be best case scenario if it did hit that level, and they all did. So that's the way I see it, Josh. But again, to each their own. We'll all have different opinions. But I still think for WWE this year, that was the best they've done all year. All right. Zoa here. Yeah, Rollins going to be out mostly for the... Yeah, you would think if it doesn't look good, as we just said, the quote is, doesn't look good, it's going to be out for mostly, maybe the rest of the year or something. Give it to Breaker. He wins the world title. Rollins return demanding the belt. Breaker says no, and boom, you got your setup. Yeah, that can work too, right? And that's why, like I mentioned, I think if you give Breaker a win over Reigns, maybe that elevates and sort of gets this thing even further towards that. But yeah, I think that's something to consider there. All right, Michael too. Yeah, they are definitely building that. That's a lock for SummerSlam. You can go ahead and put that on the card. Aleister Black versus Damian Priest. That's going to happen. There's no question about that. They've been building to it for weeks, it seems like. Which that's good. I think it's good for both men. I don't know if it's good for Damian Priest because I think you could see him lose that one maybe. But I think that's good. It's a good match though. Those are two hard-hitting guys, and you need, as I said, you got to fill the card somehow. 2 nights. You got to do it 2 nights here, and so I think it's a good one to add to the mix. I like it. So, yeah, Zoa said too. Evolution was awesome, hands down. Need more all women's PLEs. They deserve it. Shout out to Naomi for the successful cash in. Yeah, probably once every 7 years isn't going to cut it anymore after that show. WWE may need to up that a little bit more frequency coming out of it. So, all right, let's see what else we've got here on this. Yeah, everyone, I'm looking on Twitter/X here. Everyone's kind of talking about the Triple H comment on Seth Rollins. That's kind of the talking point right now. See if Triple H adds anything on actual, what he thought of Evolution itself and all that kind of stuff. But I know Big E was saying a lot of good things afterwards, just kind of talking about. I'm going to read this actually. Here's the quote. This industry is one that will often break your heart. It will disappoint you. It will sometimes have you questioning why you still watch wrestling. Nights like tonight remind you they make you feel something. Thank you, Rhea Ripley. Thank you, IYO SKY. What they did here tonight left us with something truly special that I will not forget for a very, very long time. Yeah, so Big E was talking about how he was getting emotional watching the match, And it's pretty cool to hear from someone like Big E. So, yeah. All right. Let's see what else we've got here on this. Yeah, by the way, if you do want to follow me on Twitter, you can do that as well. If you guys want, I'll drop it in the chat here. Some of you already follow me there. So I think you follow me there. Others do as well. But I will drop it in the chat if you want to follow me on Twitter. I tend to tweet a little bit more these days. But you can check it out there if you want to. Okay, so what are they going to do with the Money in the Bank briefcase? I mean, to me, it is... I think, look, you have up to a year. And that's why I think if you are convinced that Rollins will be back within that year time before next June, I think you keep it away from everyone else. And that's where it's kind of the story, isn't it? Because, hey, maybe Breaker's trying to say, hey, I deserve that briefcase. Bronson Reed's trying to say, hey, I deserve that briefcase. And you kind of build up some tension between the two hosses. Maybe that plays out for a while, but, Heyman is the one that's trying to keep these two beasts from destroying each other, from, somehow maybe getting this briefcase, keeping it, warm for Seth Rollins once he comes back. There's a lot of story stuff you can do there, and you've got to think maybe this is one where they have to add someone else to the group, but you just don't know. You just don't know, and that's why, me seeing a Ricky Saints lose yesterday to Ethan Page, to me that said Ricky Saints was on the way up to the main roster. Could he have joined the group? Now you don't know what those plans are going to be if he was supposed to, right? So, I don't know. I tend to like the idea better that you keep the briefcase with Heyman and leave it at that. But that's only if you know that Rollins is going to be back in a certain time frame. If Rollins is out for a year from yesterday, well, then that's probably not realistic. But we got to know the timeline. I think a lot of these questions will be answered probably tomorrow once we know what the MRI says and where he's going to be at. So, yeah. Salute to the angry Lakers fan versus WWE. Yeah, salute to you as well. Appreciate you jumping in. Yeah, always a fun chat here after these when we do these for the show. And so, yeah, again, I always appreciate you guys jumping in, checking it out. And like I mentioned earlier, if you want to join the Tribal Chiefs, we do a lot more members content these days. We're going to start doing more of that, talking wrestling, probably outside of WWE too. We did talk a little AEW this weekend just because it was all in and all that. I'm going to start doing the weekly show, where it's kind of a more long-form show, my thoughts on the entire week in wrestling and all that, give you guys some fun stuff, some opinions on what's happening, maybe some matches of the week to watch if you missed it, all that kind of stuff. So you guys you've kind of told me you've been on board with that, so we're probably going to start doing that soon. So I appreciate all you guys for jumping in on that. 504 Who Dat Guy. I mean, tonight proved what you've been saying for a while. The women's division above and beyond better than the guys. I mean, listen, if we're talking about delivering on a PLE, I will stick with what I've said for the past hour. I think it was the best of the year. And, I think, too, and that's why I go back to that triple threat match, the start of the show. That set the tone, right? I mean, Becky, Bayley, and Lyra came out and said, hey, this is the tone we're setting for the night. And when they did that, again, everything from there just sort of, it followed. And not everything, lived up to it. I think if you're ranking the matches, you're going to do the first match and the last match in whatever order you want to put it in. Probably the last match first, then the triple threat match maybe second. However, whatever order you want to put it in. But, I mean, either way, everyone, as I said, I think everyone delivered on this show. And that's all you can ask for with a show that did not have a lot of build. Effectively, I think, it was just, you're building to a lot of shows. I mean, there were so many things you had to kind of try to cook up here. You were building towards Saturday night's main event, Evolution, SummerSlam at the same time, basically. You're having to get some stuff in motion there. Basically, 3 big shows you're having to build to all at the same time. And so, this one, was it a little lacking for some people? Sure. But it's all about the execution of the show itself, and they knocked it out of the park. No question. So Michael said he rewatched the AEW All-In Death Match between Hangman, Adam Page, and Jon Moxley. Reminds you of the Avengers Assemble. Yeah, the Cody Roman. Yeah, that was what they were going for. There's no question. They had kind of all the callbacks and all that stuff. That was what they're going for in that one. And so, AEW probably was getting a lot of the talk yesterday, for sure. But then, like we mentioned, I think the Rollins thing would have changed that a little bit. The Reigns return would have certainly been the biggest talking point coming out of the day. had that happen, but maybe we wait till tomorrow to see Roman Reigns coming back. Really, I think, that's sort of one of the biggest elements for tomorrow. Also, it is the idea of what's it look like with the women's title, right? I mean, and going back to Deontay's question earlier, I said I was going to get back to it. Will the title switch brands? And I know Brenda brought that up. I mean, it's a good question. I mean, do you do something there where maybe you switch brands? You kind of have an idea to work with on that. That's certainly a possibility. So, I think that's certainly something that we could look at and see, because, I'm going back to what you brought up too earlier. Like I'm now on board for the idea that you do something where Naomi is the champion, Jade's the champion, and then somehow you tie that story in to the longer term story with Bianca. I think that's the way to go, and I was not thinking well enough to come up with that earlier. Like that just makes a lot of sense now. Did you look at it that way? So I like it. I would like that a lot, actually. And I think, for Tiffany, Tiffany's run, she's had a long run as champion. So I think Jade winning probably does feel predictable, but if this is the longer term story you're telling, you still got some twists and turns along the way. I like it. All right. So quickly too here, Brandon said, Triple H was asked, will Evolution be an annual show? So someone asked him that in the press conference. He said, we will see if it will be demanded. Depends on how much the demand for Evolution is. Well, I mean, I think if the demand's not there after tonight, it will never be there, because, as I said, this is one of the best shows they've ever produced, probably in the Triple H era. So, I mean, I would have to think if there is going to be the demand, it would have to be after tonight. So that's my thinking on that. So, all right, guys, we're going to wrap it up here in a few. I try to sometimes keep these under an hour, but we're about the 57-minute mark. On the way out, I will plug everything else. And don't forget John Cena and Cody Rhodes back on SmackDown this week. They're going to go face-to-face, as Brian mentioned. But again, I will plug the podcast feed. Check out exclusive audio over there. Before you head out, too, don't forget, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Helps out the channel. I will once again share the join link, too, if you want to join the members here at the channel. You can do that. That helps me out, lets me do more bonus content for you guys, and just supports the channel. Just look at it as sort of a donation tier with some bonus content added in each week. So you can check that out. You can go back and listen to the predictions if you wanted to for all the big shows. We did that for all of them this weekend for members. So you can check that out. And I mentioned earlier, you can also follow me on Twitter/X as well if you want to connect on there and talk about everything pro wrestling as we do. And you can follow my written work over there too also. So that's another way to keep up with everything I've got going on with the wrestling coverage other than just here at the channel. So, all right. Always appreciate you guys jumping in. As I said, we'll talk more about this throughout the week. Who knows? Depending on kind of my availability tomorrow, we may try to do something after Raw. Normally, we don't do that each week. It just don't get a chance to do the Friday and Monday reactions. But it is such a big Raw tomorrow, where if you do have a Reigns return, that kind of stuff, you guys know me. Probably a chance I'll jump on and talk about it. But I'll let you know on that. And again, turn those notifications on so you know when we go live and do all that here at the channel. But again, appreciate you guys hopping in tonight. Fun discussion. The best show of the year in WWE was Evolution. And as I said, just tremendous stuff from top to bottom. Great start, great finish, and all the matches delivered, in my opinion. And so this will go down as, when we get to December, if we're doing our year-end awards and all that, this will be right there, and probably is going to be hard to beat the rest of the year for WWE shows. So there you have it. My thoughts on WWE Evolution. You guys continue to weigh in the comments. Anything else you want to add? Appreciate you watching as always, and I'll talk to you again here soon at Wrestling Reaction.